Hello and welcome to the International Daily Roundup by People's Dispatch, where we bring you some of the major news developments from across the world. Our headlines. It's been 17 years since the imperialist war on Iraq. What has been left behind and have any lessons been learnt at all? Healthcare workers in West Africa go on strike over poor allocation of resources in the fight against coronavirus. Caribbean nations object to the OAS decision to hold elections for the office of the Secretary General amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Writer Ahdaf Suif released from detention today after public backlash. This happened in Egypt. And automobile manufacturers across North America halt production after workers call for strikes. March 19th will be the 17th anniversary of the imperialist war on Iraq. In 2003, a NATO military coalition led by the United States under President George W. Bush invaded Iraq to topple the government of Saddam Hussein. The war, which was the culmination of nearly a decade of sanctions, was waged under false claims of weapons of mass destruction by the US administration. Even though the US formally withdrew from the war in 2011, the effects of the war on the region can be felt even today. We spoke to NewsClick's Pravir Prakayastha about the legacy of this imperialist war. Here is what he had to say.
The United States has entered a far more dangerous phase of imperialism. This is a militarized imperialism which sees that it is not necessary to hold countries down. It's not necessary to have colonies. But if we have the ability to destroy countries, then we have the ability to impose our will on the world. And in the process, if 2-3 countries are destroyed, it doesn't matter to us. So if you see West Asia, that for 20 years, we have had wars over there. We have Libya destroyed, it's really North Africa. You have, but it's a part of the same region. You have Syria, you have Iraq, you have Yemen, and we also have Lebanon, which is not a failed state as of now, but teetering into one as various financial measures are taken against Lebanon. So all of this is basically to splinter the region, destroy parts of it, and ensure that Iran does not emerge as a major power. So Iran also is, of course, not a war which has taken place in terms of a hot war, but it is nevertheless a war because all the sanctions amount to war crimes in international law. So it's really a war by another means. So if we take all of this into account, I think we have to see that America's ability to control has weakened. America's ability to, the United States' ability to economically control regions has weakened. But the United States' ability to destroy countries militarily is actually increased. And that's what we see in these regions, that what they are doing is what I said, a continuation of the gunboat diplomacy. I'll destroy you if you don't surrender. And I'm making examples of a few countries, so everybody else fall in line. So I think that's a challenge we face. And the solution, or shall we say the answer to that, has been partly what has been called as asymmetric war, in which the forces in Yemen, Iran itself, the Iraqi forces have all adopted different kinds of tactics by which they are able to inflict damage on more advanced, technologically advanced and richer countries, Saudi Arabia in the case of Yemen. In the case of Iran, we have seen the kind of missile power they have developed. So all of this is also changing the matrix of geostrategy and war. So it's a fluid situation, it's a dynamic situation in which both sides have changed their tactics. But the American strategy, if you will, can be understood that as long as we have the destructive power, we can control the world by destroying opposition. We no longer will try and control them. So this is the difference from the neocolonial phase, which we saw of imperialism earlier, in which it said we'll control the entire West Asian oil. That was their neocolonial phase. Now their phase is, we'll see that it is linked to the dollar, destroy any country which tries to de-link oil from dollar, but at the same time also see that there is no local challenge. We can't control them, but we can destroy them. I think this is the difference that you see. So I would say that what have they gained is not in terms of are they able to control the countries they've invaded, but the fact they've destroyed the countries that could be problems. Afghanistan is an outlier. It was not in the list of countries initially. It came in only because of bin Laden's attack or bin Laden's 9/11 attack. Otherwise, Afghanistan was not in the crosshairs. That's why soon after Afghanistan, you see United States pirouettes and attacks than Iraq. So I think that is the lesson we need to learn about US imperialism, that it is not what we think it is. It's no longer hegemonic in the sense of control, but it's hegemonic in the sense of its ability to destroy opponents.
In our next story, healthcare professionals assigned to deal with the coronavirus pandemic outbreak in West African countries of Ghana and Nigeria are on strike for better resources and work conditions. Doctors and other healthcare workers have been complaining about the negligence of their safety and livelihoods by the authorities. In Ghana, where 6 COVID-19 infections were confirmed as of March 15th, mortuary workers have called for a strike. The workers have demanded that the government provide them with necessary safety gear and training at the time of the pandemic. In Nigeria, on the other hand, doctors represented by the Abuja City chapter of the Association of Resident Doctors, or the ARD, have been on an indefinite strike since March 17th after the third case of a coronavirus infection was confirmed. Doctors in Nigeria have complained about the fact that the salaries have not been paid for the past 2 months. Previously, the doctors had given a 14-day ultimatum for the disbursement of their salaries, which was extended after reports emerged of the first COVID-19 patient in Nigeria. The government, however, failed to respond to their complaints and demands even within the extended deadline. This forced ARD and its members to go on the difficult decision to take a strike. In the next story, the ambassadors of 13 member states of the Organization of American States, or the OAS, objected to the intergovernmental body's decision to go ahead with the 54th Special General Assembly. The General Assembly will be held on March 20th to elect the next Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General of the OAS. The representatives from the Caribbean member states of the OAS circulated a letter requesting the organization to suspend the March 20th Assembly and pointed to safety concerns amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The representatives argued that the session would be in contravention to the health recommendations issued by the WHO and other governmental health agencies to slow down the spread of the novel coronavirus. The signatories of the letter also raised concerns of the assembly likely to fall short of quorum because of the pandemic. They argued that such meetings would be regarded as lacking legitimacy, which in turn can damage the effectiveness of the OAS as a representative body of the Americas. Meanwhile, the OAS issued a statement saying that it had invited the US Department of Health and Human Services, or the HHS, to guarantee the health and well-being of assembly participants. In the assembly, Ecuador's Maria Fernanda Espinosa, former foreign minister and the 73rd president of the United Nations General Assembly, is set to stand against Uruguay's Luis Almagro, who is the incumbent Secretary General. Almagro has been criticized for promoting the US imperialist interests against the progressive governments of the region. His defense of the sanctions on Venezuela and the Bolivian coup d'etat that deposed President Evo Morales has made many states uncomfortable. The Egyptian government recently released prominent writer Aftaf Souef and 3 others from detention. The activists were arrested earlier yesterday in the capital city Cairo for holding an unpermitted protest. Ahtaf, along with other activists, held a protest to demand that the authorities in Egypt take serious steps to protect prison inmates from the possible spread of coronavirus. The government of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi had recently passed a law criminalizing protests that did not seek prior permission. The activists were reportedly let go after the government faced massive backlash over the arrest. Several human rights groups have also voiced their concern over the conditions in Egyptian prisons at the time of the pandemic. Any outbreak of coronavirus infection in overcrowded Egyptian prisons can become a health disaster. The El-Sisi government has not allowed relatives to visit the prisoners since the outbreak of the infection. As per the government sources, the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Egypt stands at 196, with 6 deaths. However, independent estimates put the numbers at over 6,000 or even more. Leila Souef, the mother of Ala Abdul Fattah, a blogger arrested for instigating protests against the El-Sisi government, had earlier written to the Egyptian Attorney General raising similar concerns. She had stated that temporarily releasing prisoners can work towards preventing a large-scale outbreak in Egypt. And finally, major North American car manufacturers have announced the halting of all production till the end of March. This announcement came on March 18th after workers threatened multinational strikes across the continent over the safety concerns amid the coronavirus outbreak. Fiat Chrysler, Ford and General Motors are among the largest car manufacturers that have announced a halt in the production. Workers at the Fiat Chrysler production units in the US states of Michigan and Ohio began a strike on March 18th, forcing an effective shutdown. Workers were also acting in defiance of the union representatives who supported the management claims that the factories were safe to work in. Similar strikes were called in Ford Motors and General Motors in the region that could have affected more than half the car and automotive manufacturers within the US. The protests were among the several workers' actions that have taken place across sectors in defiance of corporations' reluctance to take adequate measures to protect workers. Across the US, the number of reported cases of coronavirus has soared up to 9,400 so far, with 155 deaths. That's all we have in this episode of the International Daily Roundup. To know more about these stories, visit our website peoplesdispatch.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for watching.
De pie cantante va